Hello and welcome to Casual Marketing. I'll be your host, Just James, and today I want to talk about the Meta Business Suite. So I chose this to be the first topic mainly because if you've worked in digital marketing, you may actually understand that Meta, Facebook, they've had a lot of different platforms that they've created. Some still exist, some don't. If you're brand new to digital marketing, you may not completely understand what's been going on the last couple of years, but essentially Facebook has really made a lot of changes with how these platforms operate and what they're designed to do. So if you're not familiar, Meta is the parent company of Facebook, and they actually control Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, and a lot of other smaller companies as well. So what they did is they created the Meta Business Suite to be able to allow advertisers and business owners to kind of control a lot of these different aspects of their business all in one place. From all of these different platforms. So that's the importance of the Meta Business Suite. It has a lot of tools. The initial focus that I'm going to do with this video will be on how to get started with advertising and what types of settings you need to pay attention to and what you need to do to set up. If you've ever made a Facebook page, you're probably familiar with things like boosting a post. Facebook, if you've ever created a page, you'll typically see anytime you do a post, they'll say, hey, if you want to reach 1,000 more people, give us $100 more, something like that. It's usually all kinds of different arbitrary amounts, and they'll give you a couple interesting options, and they'll even give you some demographic options as well. But realistically, it doesn't give you all of the tools that they offer, and that's why things like the Meta Business Suite can be really helpful. You get a lot more tools, you get a lot more access to different ways to target people, and that's the reason why, honestly, if you're making a page and you're going to end up advertising, that's what you're going to want to do. Boosting posts is really not necessary at this point, but there is a learning curve and there are a couple key things to understand. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Ultimately, I'll try and go over as many of the tools as I can in future videos, but for now, let's focus on the advertising part. Okay, so this first screen is actually what you'll see when you get to the Meta Business Suite. If you've never set this up before, you'll probably have to make an account. And what you can do to quickly get here is just do business.facebook.com. They'll usually guide you through the process, and you'll be able to see what you need to do to get everything set up. Once you get that done and you connect your accounts or whatever pages you have access to, they'll show up here. You'll actually see Casual Marketing, the two different accounts that show up there, and then you can also see there's a drop down here. If I click that, I can go through any account that I have access to. What Meta Business Suite is trying to do is basically combine a large amount of different tools all into one. It's had many different names and it's expanded and will continue to change. But a couple of key things that you can see when you first get to this page is you'll see recommendations, any alerts. They even have some insights from the pages that you have control of. They've even added some cute things like to-do lists. You can actually see what's new in Meta Business Suite, so they'll tell you about new offerings that are available, and you can see on this left side there's quite a few options between commerce. You can do ads, insights. They have a whole planner for you can kind of plan out your entire social calendar. So a lot of really great tools, but like I said, we're going to focus on ads today, so let's stick to that. And if I click ads here, you'll see this page doesn't have too much really going on. There's some metrics. I haven't spent anything on this account in particular, but you can see there's really not much here. But anyway, so you can kind of see that this page doesn't really have much going on. You can create an ad here with this button, but that seems a little bit of jumping the gun. So what I would recommend is once you enter this homepage here for Meta Business Suite, just click all tools, and it's going to be overwhelming at first because there are quite a few different options that they have, but don't worry about most of it for now. We're just going to focus on going to Ads Manager specifically. All right, so this is Ads Manager, and it has a couple really important sections that you want to pay attention to. The overall structure is very similar to Excel, where you have these columns and you have rows and you can select them. And obviously some of these have different settings that you want to mess with, like the budget, and some of them are just spitting out information like how much you've spent or when your campaign ends. But the main way that Ads Manager works is there's this key separation. You have campaigns, you have ad sets, and you have ads. And the way that it works is that a campaign, the way to think about it is your objective. This is where you decide, do you want to generate traffic to your website? Do you want to sell a product? Do you just want someone to engage with your video? And when you jump into the ad set section, this is where you're actually picking a lot of your targeting. This is where you want to figure out what demographic you're focused on. And there are a lot of options, and we'll go into those in a second. And then going even deeper, you get into your ads. And the ads are where you want to basically show your creative. And this obviously can be video, it can be audio, images, a mixture of everything. And so this is where all of your actual assets live that you're going to be launching. And all of these are connected. So you start with the campaign, you break down into your ad set, and then from the ad set you get into your ad. That is the most important component of how Ads Manager works. And keep in mind that other advertising platforms will have slight spins on this. So don't assume that this process and this breakdown will fit into every advertising platform that you use and that we go over. This is specific to Ads Manager. This is how Ads Manager handles this process. So just want you to keep that in mind. But obviously once you get in here, you're going to want to start messing around. So you would click this green button here and hit create. And this process has changed a lot over the years. So don't be surprised if it changes again from the time you're seeing this video. But what Facebook and Meta is trying to do is just really simplify the objectives. They want you to be able to figure out your objective very quickly. So they've broken the initial decision process into these key categories: awareness, traffic, engagement, leads, app promotion, and sales. Honestly, they're all pretty self-explanatory, and they do tell you what they're good for on the right side there. So they give you a pretty good idea of what to look out for. So what we'll start with, just to keep things simple, is an awareness campaign. And you'll see we have different options: good for reach, brand awareness, video views, and store location awareness if you have a physical location. So we'll just click that, and then you can name your campaign, which is optional. For now, we'll skip it, but you could basically start punching everything in if you have a certain naming structure. But for now, we'll just hit continue. So you can clearly name your campaign here. They just by default named it New Awareness Campaign, and then you'll see a whole bunch of other smaller details. Remember, as of right now, we are on the campaign level. We have not messed with the ad set or the ad, which means we are only discussing the objective. Then you'll see the option for A/B test. Don't worry about that. If you're just starting off, this is for testing. If you want to test creative, different demographics, you can use these features here. If you're just getting started, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because you need to understand, you have to have some type of baseline, essentially, is the best way to think about it. And then they have the system called Advantage Campaign Budget. And the Advantage part is sort of a newer way of looking at it, where they're trying to simplify advertising, which isn't a bad thing if you're getting started out, but sometimes eliminates control. And so Advantage Campaign Budget is something that's really going to depend on what your goals are and what you're trying to do with your overall campaign. So the way to think about it is, right now, if your campaign is only going to have one specific demographic that you're looking at, you can probably turn this feature on, because it just unifies your budget across your entire campaign. But let's say you had 5 different demographics that you wanted to target within this awareness campaign. You may want to specify individual budgets for every single demographic. And if you are going to do that, you don't necessarily want to have just one giant budget that lets Facebook decide what's going to get more of the money. And then you'll see this option called Campaign Bid Strategy, which in this case, it's default set to highest volume. So it's going to get the most awareness for as cheap as it can get, for the cheapest bid. You can do things like bid caps. For awareness campaigns, they're less important. These options are typically more important when you're trying to get a direct sale. That's when it's a little bit more important to control what you're paying per conversion. But most of the time, the Facebook system handles it relatively well. So now what we can do is we can jump into the ad set, which you can just click here. It's already labeled New Awareness Ad Set. And you'll see we have even more options now. So immediately you get access to whatever Facebook page you're going to run off of. And depending on what you're trying to do, moving on, you'll see this option, Dynamic Creative. So Dynamic Creative allows you to create a whole bunch of different elements really, really quickly. It's a setting that it's kind of in a strange place because you have to turn it on at the ad set level, which has nothing to do with creative. So it's a little bit weird. Most of the time I'm keeping it off at the moment, but we'll go into it a little bit later once we dive more into the ad. So in budget and schedule, you can immediately see, okay, well, here's our start date and our start time. And then you can set an end date, but that is optional because you can have the campaign run for basically ever. So we'll do a quick test here and we'll do the 31st. And now we get to the really fun part, which is the audience selection. So you'll see custom audience is the first option that you have available. Custom audiences are for audiences that you actually have created or control. So that can be an email list that you uploaded, which I'll go into that later in a later video as well on how to actually do that. But also people engaging with your page, you can add a lot of that stuff right here in custom audience. But all of that is controlled by another tool, which is Audience Manager. That's what is actually pulling these lists and how they show up, which will be covered in a different topic. Then you have the option to choose location. So you can pretty much choose anywhere. What's really nice, the convenient factor is, let's say you don't want to be super specific to a country. Let's say you knew a city you wanted to do. You can actually type in Austin, Texas, and immediately select a radius within 50 miles. And it gives you this nice radius here where you can kind of see. It's really easy to use. You can even add locations in bulk here. If you click this button, you can actually import them by country, regions, DMA, city, postal codes, addresses. Very useful tool. A lot of options, lots of different things that you can do. So lots of ways to play with this. Another key setting you'll want to pay attention to, which I think a lot of marketers tend to overlook, is this setting here where it says people living in or recently in this location. This is very important if you don't want people that are tourists, or you don't want people that may have left that location and you need people that are actually living there. You'll see that there are way more options. You can do people living in this location, people recently in this location, and people traveling specifically to this location. So I think it's pretty easy to understand why these settings would be important. So just keep that in mind. Depending on what you're actually trying to accomplish, you may want to change this to people living in the location, or if, let's say, you're doing something that involves traveling might be more important for you. And so you can select it and now it will adjust. And you'll see on this right side here, you'll see audience definition. Honestly, this tool I have not found to be super accurate, so take it with a grain of salt, but it kind of gives you an idea of the audience available in that location. Keep in mind, the moment that I mix anything like custom audiences, this will say unknown because unfortunately Facebook cannot show that information due to privacy concerns that have just kind of plagued the industry for years from people abusing these systems. Going further down, you can see the option for age. So you can go as low as 13, and once you hit 65, it's just 65 plus. So you can immediately, that is your age range that you can target. There are certain things like political issues and social issues where you won't have as much freedom, but Facebook's pretty good about making you aware, and their system tends to flag content like that pretty swiftly. And then you can obviously go into gender, there's men and women and all, and then you get into detailed targeting, which requires you to have the age at 18 or higher. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to do these more specific breakdowns. And honestly, if you're new to all of this, I just highly recommend hitting this browse button and going through a lot of these because it can be pretty interesting and eye-opening. The first option you get is demographics, which will show things like education level, and you can see it gets pretty detailed. Associate's degree, college grad, doctorate, and you can even go to life events and you can see away from family, away from hometown. You can target people's birthdays, upcoming birthdays, long distance relationships. And then you have these other breakdowns that are kind of beyond demographics, that is interest, which is endless, and you won't necessarily see every option if you just break it down here. Sometimes you do have to type them in, but sports and shopping, and you can see they quickly break down into all sorts of different things. Dance, pets breaks down into dogs, cats, fish, even horses. And if you go to behaviors, you can see other options like people that have an anniversary. You can see their consumer classification. Tends to be broken down by specific countries. You can see their digital activities, which is, are they a Facebook payments user? So this breaks down dramatically. So the way that these work is they're considered OR statements. So this is not someone who is a Facebook payments user and someone who has an associate degree. This would be considered OR. So the more things that I add, the more that this will expand. But as of right now, with this current setting, I am only targeting people within this realm, people that are in Austin, Texas, 50-mile radius, and meet these two criteria and meet these points. This is extraordinarily narrow, which is why it's even telling me that this is really specific, and it may not even run. There is a suggestion option where you can add a couple more things like college grad, and just for, I'm just gonna add a couple things just to kind of showcase. It immediately lifted up by adding some more college grad associate degree. So now it's at least considered in the green. Our audience is defined. Like I said, don't worry about this number too much, but obviously you don't want to get too specific because that does cause a lot of problems down the road. So now I have my settings. It's just kind of random at the moment, but like I said, you can get really specific. You can even save this audience for the future if you don't want to have to sit here and kind of custom create everything over and over again. And then you can focus on specific languages. And then the show more options button, which funny enough is a great way to segue into, unfortunately, a lot of these systems tend to have lots of bugs. And this is an instance where we're actually not seeing any additional options. But for now, that's okay. We won't worry about it too much, but there's a lot of refreshing in digital marketing and deleting cookies and resetting your browsers and trying it on different devices. Unfortunately, it comes with the territory. But if we continue to go further down, you'll see this option for placements, and you'll see once again we come across this advantage setting. And then you'll also see manual placements, and they actually recommend Advantage Plus placements. So this is a huge topic that we could talk about for hours, so I'm going to try and simplify it at the moment. What this is saying is if you leave it on Advantage Plus placements, Facebook will show your ad on as many different placements as it can, and the algorithm and their AI tools will decide where it performs the best. That sounds really nice, and there are lots of moments where that is very beneficial, but you know your creative better than anybody, and you hopefully understand your customer better than anybody. And so you have to really pay attention to, are you okay with that asset being shown in all of these different placements, or do you want to break it down? And this is where it's good to do a lot of A/B testing and see what works best for your product or your service. And so if I click manual placements here, you'll actually see quite a few options start to pop out, and they're giving me some advice and some more information. So this is where you can kind of bulk turn these settings on and off, or you can scroll down here and they all expand. And certain campaign objectives allow you to target specific placements and some don't. So this is something you'll have to mess around with if you want to get really specific, but they do a pretty good job of showing you previews and what your ad will essentially get turned into on all of these different placements. But the best examples I can give is a lot of the industry has moved into vertical video, and that has really changed how people consume media and also consumed ads. So these are things you may want to keep in mind. You can change your creative per placement, which I'll show in the next step, but you may have certain demographics that you want to engage them only in specific areas of these platforms. So something to keep in mind, very important to A/B test. So this isn't something that I would take lightly, but this is just something that you'll have to pay attention to, and this list will grow and change as Meta changes and as they further develop their entire systems and all of these different offerings that they have. So tons of options. They even have some brand safety options. You can create block lists if you don't want your ads to show up in specific places or topics. Obviously very good if you have a sensitive subject or service that you're trying to put in front of people. And then as you get further, you'll see this optimization for ad delivery. One of the more important sections for sure, and you'll see a couple of these options right here. These can change a little bit based on what your objective is, especially if you're doing conversion, but this is really essentially what you're paying for at the end of the day when you pick a campaign. So that's why this setting becomes really important, because what do you ultimately want? And so ads is where, once again, we're going into the creative aspect of what we're trying to build. So what you'll see is the name of your ad. You can select your Facebook page, and then if you have it linked, your Instagram account, which is very important. So then you have branded content, which is more if you're like working with an influencer, or you are an influencer working with a brand. So you can actually go and search their account, and it just makes sure that everything's tagged and linked up. Like you would see in an organic post that just shows a brand and a creator working together. And then you get into ad setup, and once again, a lot of different options here. You can just create your ad from scratch. You can use an existing post that's been on your Facebook or your Instagram, and then you can use a Creative Hub mockup, which is another tool that I'll probably go over to in the future, but you can basically create mockups in a different tool if you don't want to mess with all this ad settings and potentially messing something up with your campaign. You can do it there and then basically import it. So nothing too crazy. And then you decide, do you want single image or video, a carousel, or a collection? For simplicity's sake, for this video, we'll just focus on single image or video, which is self-explanatory. And then this is where you would add your media. So you actually choose what you want to add. You can even have it create a video if you have a couple different images, and they have a lot of nice presets. But basically, you add your information, you would punch your text in. They'll give you a couple different options if you want to have Facebook kind of try different things for primary text. And then you can even add a destination if you want to add a link or something like that in the future. But that's a quick rundown of the 3 different settings that you have. So basically, just to quickly go over, you're at the campaign level, you decide your objective, you decide your budget. If you want all of your ad sets to share a budget, you get to your ad set. Your ad set is deciding how long your ad is going to run and who you want to target. And then you get to your ad, and that is what you're going to actually be putting in front of people and how you want them to interact with your business. And that covers the actual ad creation process. All right, well, thank you for watching. I hope this was, really helpful. My goal is to really continue to show as much information as I can. I want to actually show you these platforms and how they work. So I'm not trying to have you stare at my face a whole lot. I want you to actually see these platforms in action and all of the different settings, because I know it can be overwhelming. And I've seen how people kind of join agencies or join a company, and they might go over a lot of strategy and how they operate, but sometimes they don't go over a lot of the specifics about how to actually use the platform. And that's where you end up with a lot of mistakes of accidentally spending a daily budget instead of a lifetime budget, or setting the wrong end date and running a campaign too short or too long. I want to help people avoid a lot of those. So leave a comment if you have any feedback, or if there's anything you specifically want me to cover, but my goal is to keep just diving deeper into these systems. So thank you for watching, and have a great day.